Yo guys, so welcome back to part 3 of this making it simple to the game episode thing I'm doing. Such a shit intro. So today what we're going to be doing is making an enemy controller. So as you can see in the scene, I've already added in an enemy. I've animated them and everything. If you need any tips on animation, you can go to the previous video, which I'll put somewhere down below or something. I don't know. We'll see. Somewhere on the screen. Just click it. And what we're going to do is get our player to interact with enemies. So taking damage, there's like health, maybe a short buffer time where the player can't take any damage, maybe a small knockback, having the enemy move in a certain way. But yeah, let's just get into it. So I haven't actually pre-done anything, so this is just going to be all off the top of my head. So if anything goes wrong, please do allow it. Basically, just allow it. Anyway, yeah, let's get into it. Come on. So first thing we're going to do, is add a box collider. It's always a good first step. Edit it a bit so he stands on the grass, and then add a rigid body component with gravity. So next thing I want to do is I want to add a tag of an enemy. So when we do collide with it, we know what it is. So next we go into our controller script. We need to add. What do we need to add? We need to add health. Public int health. Okay, let's do in our void update. If health is equal to 0, we are going to end game. When we get to dealing with UI, we'll sort something out with that, but for now I guess we can just destroy this, so then the player just dies basically. In terms of taking damage from the enemy, what we can do is in the onCollision enter 2D function that we made in, I think, the first episode, we can do what we're doing, right? If other dot game object dot tag is equal to enemy. Again, you just want to make sure that you spell that exactly correct. So enemy and enemy. Then we want to do health minus equals 1, like that. Next, what we want to do is we want to add a bool can damage, I guess. No. Let's call it damaged. There we damaged, like that. So when we do collide, what we want to do is we want to set damage to true, and then we can add a check here and not damaged. So that way, when your player does get hit, damage is set to true, and then you can't take like infinite amounts of damage in one tick, one frame from an enemy. And now in this void update section, we can do public float damage timer, like that. So we can do damage timer minus equals time.delta time. And what that does basically is if we set damage timer as 2 seconds, for example, what it will do is it will minus off real time, or minus off seconds in real time. So it would take exactly 2 seconds for damage timer to equal 0. And then we can add this check. Damage timer is less than or equal to 0. Then what we can do is damaged equals false, like that. you have to make sure you have less than or equal to, especially when dealing with floats and taking off time, because if you just set it to equals to, you will find problems. And if you can't work it out, the reason is because as you're taking time off of damageTimer, it will never, or very rarely, set exactly to 0. So what it will do is it will skip over 0 and just keep infinitely taking off time, and your if statement will never run the code inside it. So it's necessary to have the less than and equals to. But yeah, we can set damage to false, and we can do damageTimer is back to 2 seconds, to F. And now we need to add a if statement, if damaged. Then we want to move all this code into there, and that is just saying that if it has been damaged, then we want to start the damageTimer and then do the rest of the code basically. So now if we go back into Unity and it loads, there we go. Go to our player, we want to set this health to say 3 for example, and our damageTimer to 2. Okay, if we press play now, and we walk over to the enemy, as we touch it, you should notice this sets to true, and the enemy also goes back. Our health goes down, and let's jump on its head. You'll see that we won't take infinite damage. Okay, but you will also notice that we can just stand in contact with the enemy and not take any damage. So this is why we need to add in a knockback. So you basically remove yourself from contact with the enemy in a way. I mean, it's just the best way to deal with it, and it also allows the player to get, how do I say this, like, so it gives them time to move away in those 2 seconds. It gives them a chance to escape. And yeah, as you'll see, if you lose all your health, you will just die. Another thing that we want to do, which I actually didn't do in the first episode, if we go into our rigid body, in our constraints, we want to freeze our Z rotation, because what that does, it stops your player from tipping over. And we also want to do that with this enemy. So now they can't tip over either. So next thing we want to do is add knockback to the player. So the way we do this is by first adding a bool called public bool canMove. Okay, so what we're going to do is when the player takes damage, we're going to stun lock them in a way. So once we apply that, once we get that bool, define that bool, we will move our movement functions into an if statement containing the bool. So if you can move, then you have the ability to move basically. Okay, otherwise you can't. So when you then come into contact with the enemy, what you want to do is set canMove to false, so the player can't move. Next thing you want to do is you want to calculate the direction that the player is at the hit the enemy at. So we simply do this by vector2. We're defining a new variable here, vector2 direction. We're going to call it equals transform.position, the position of the player, minus the GameObject.transformPosition, so the enemy that we have just collided with, their transformed position, and this will give you the direction that we're facing basically. Okay, with this direction variable, we need to go into our rigid body dot add force direction times our moveSpeed and force mode 2D dot impulse. Now, if I'm totally honest, I don't really know what they do, but they work. So I've noticed that a lot with programming. You don't necessarily need to know exactly what it does unless you're learning it to a very deep level, in which case most of you won't be. But if you are, then there will be loads of information online about what it all does. Unity will have their own sort of forums page that will tell you exactly what all of the different functions do. So I recommend going on there and doing some research if you're interested, or if you need to know it or want to know it to a deeper level. Anyway, next what we do is, now that our canMove has been set to false, we then need to set it back to true, don't we? However, we don't want to do that immediately because we want our player to actually move backwards away. So the easiest way that I would think to do this is by making something called a coroutine. So we need enemyAnimator, knockback, stun, like that. What we can pass through here is a float called stun time. Oh. So with this, what we do is yield, return new, wait for seconds. As you've seen, that's all popped up by itself. Wait for seconds, return time. So what this does is it will start a coroutine called knockback stun, and this yield return new wait for seconds will wait for stun time seconds before running the code below it. So now if we run canMove equals true and allow the player to move again, it will wait for the amount of past time, so stun time, before being able to move the player again. So now if we come into here and we do start coroutine, and then we need to do knockback stun, and then say we want to put in 1.5 seconds, semicolon at the end, and that is it. Back into Unity. So we actually have an error here. Let's just try running, see what happens, see if it goes away. Okay, right, it's not gone away. We'll have a look at that in a second. Let's make sure this actually works, all of this. So first thing we're going to do is make sure our canMove is actually checked before running. So now when we run into the player, you see I can't move. Okay, I get knocked back and I can't move until time is gone. We die. So onto this error, if we just double click on it, it doesn't actually take us anywhere, so we can't fix this error. I'm not sure why, but it's just ignore it, doesn't matter. So looking at the recording time, this will actually be it for this episode. Basically, we've got the player colliding with enemies and adding a stun time, adding health to the enemy, or to the player even, sorry. And we're starting to get some sort of game, some sort of dodging mechanic that we might need in the game. So as you can see, it's coming together quite well, quite quickly as well. So I hope you guys did enjoy it. Please feel free to like and subscribe, share this with your friends, share this with anyone. Save it for later use to practice with. But yeah, I hope you guys' games are coming on quite well. And thank you for watching. See ya.